Okay, hi everybody. Thank you for having us. My name is Martina Haidvogl, and I'm a media conservator at the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. And Mark Hellar is a software consultant for us.
Hi.
Yeah. And so we want to talk to you about a case study of the usage of a MediaWiki, maybe in the context that may not be familiar, or I don't know. I'm sorry I missed the day yesterday, so I don't know how much of an outlier we are here. But anyways, we want to present to you a case study of using MediaWiki to document our artworks. So SMWCon is in downtown San Francisco, and we have a collection of contemporary artworks of more than 40,000 artworks, and about 400 of those are media artworks, are software-based, are installation-based. And I will try to explain to you a little bit the difference or the different approach we have with works of contemporary art versus works that are more traditional, like a painting or a sculpture, that, especially in conservation, we treat these works as like we're preserving them as they are. We don't want them to change. And now, on the other hand, we have these like new contemporary artworks that are installation-based, and they're very different and they change over time. So we're actually, instead of conserving the status quo, we're actually managing change and sort of documenting that history of the work over time. And yeah, anyway, so one of the case studies we want to present here today is an artwork by San Francisco-based artist Bill Fontana, and it's called Sonic Shadows. And we first installed it on our 5th floor bridge here in 2011. And not to get too much into the details of the work, but it utilizes, so you have these like 4 speakers on the bridge that are turning, and as you walk over the bridge, you're almost like hit by that sound of these like sonic speakers that have this very focused audio or playback. And the source that is fed into those speakers is coming from our boiler room, where the artist mounted accelerometers, which are these like contact microphones, little sensors that detect the vibrations, and that is being modulated and it's going through some software programs, and then is played back on the bridge. And then the museum was closed, and we got a new building, and then the work was reinstalled for our opening in 2016 or 2017. And as part of that renovation, our museum was complying with the San Francisco building codes, which is now calling for all buildings to be, I think it's LEED Gold plus standard. So we were remodeling our whole water system and our boiler room. So when the work was reinstalled, the artist went into that new boiler room and literally could not find the sounds anymore. So he went there, and he's like, he cannot find the sounds anymore that he used in the first installation. So this is just one example of how there can be change over time, and how can we then, as the caretakers of these works, document these iterations and these changes. So SMWCon has done a lot of research on that topic of what is the information that we want to capture as a museum, as these caretakers of the works. And this is just a graphic that is sort of trying to capture all of these different blobs of information. And what we're, with traditional databases or traditional systems, what we're really good at capturing is this more descriptive part. So, you know, you have a painting, it's oil on linen, it has certain dimensions, like there's these like very clear data points, if you will. What we're not so good at is everything sort of more to the right, that is this more contextual information. when in the museum, we have different places where we put this kind of information. And I just quickly want to mention that just to give you an idea of how siloed that information is across the museum. So we have our collections database that is a classic place for museums to put their information. And we have a digital asset management system that holds all our images and videos and documents that are being generated. And then every department, in addition to that, has hard copy folders. And then we have our library and the archive. So, and in addition, so again, yeah, so each department has these hard copy folders, plus a lot of information is in emails and is in digital folders that the museum has. So you see that there's a lot of, it's quite dispersed. And this, I just added this image to also give you a visual of how so this is what our database is currently, but we just got a new database. But we've had this database for, I think, 30 years and 20, for a very long time. And the reason we've had that for so long is that museum databases actually have not changed. They've been in this sort of state of very targeted towards these traditional works of paintings or sculptures for so long. So our museum decided to not invest in a system that was basically very similar to the one we've already had. So as part of this research that I showed you earlier with the blobs, we put together these objectives as to what is the system that we would actually like? What is it that that we want these tools to support? And one of the biggest things is to foster collaboration. So when we have these very complex works of art, it's not just one person working on them. You have a conservator, you have exhibitions technical, so media techs, you have the curator. So a lot of people are generating information. And now how do you capture that information? And because if you do capture these multiple voices, you create records that are rich, that are not just one sort of person's tunnel vision, if you will. And we wanted a system that's easy to use, because if people don't use it, you don't get that knowledge. Yeah, and this is how we got to the MediaWiki, or to launch a MediaWiki instance at the museum. And a big push for that too was that when I started and when I went on staff, there was no way for curators to see, to watch the videos. So we had one work that was a 4-channel installation, and back when I started 7 years ago, we had to actually install 5 monitors, 5 DVD players, and synchronize them for the curator to experience the work. So a big push for that too was to find an easy way for curators to have access to their collection ultimately. We can capture a lot of documentation in here, and so if you recall that database that I showed you earlier, it's really hard in that to tell a story of how the work developed, what's the evolution, how do you install that in the galleries, what were certain decisions that were being made, what does it even look like? So this is the first installment of the MediaWiki that Mark was instrumental in putting together. And then, so people really embraced that, and this was the first one that I was quite the force in building. So a lot of the information you find here is very conservation oriented, and then we took it to another group, and we actually brought in other voices. And what was the biggest learning experience for me at that time was how important design is for I don't know if that's universal or if that's the museum visual people, but there were a lot of points around functionality that we could not discuss until the design question. So it was almost like, I don't know, we cannot address this because it doesn't look good. So we have to first make it look good. And what was interesting on my learning curve was that the design actually helped in addressing a lot of these functionality issues, and that these two are kind of paired and you cannot look at them separately. So this is how that record looks today. So we have these tabs now. So you first go there, which you kind of get an overview of what the work is. You can watch that video. You have all this like tombstone information. And then on the installations tab is where you see the different installments of the work, and then you can, from there, you can sort of get into that. So if you clicked on one of those, this is now the 2011 version. It has all that information. Okay, and I'll hand it over to you, Mark.
Hi. So you may know all these points already. This comes from a slide where we're presenting technology to museums, but yeah, it's open source and free. That's great. And the multimedia support's really nice because we can put all kinds of exotic media inside, audio, video, things like that. One of the things we're really doing a big push on right now is studying the 3D printed objects in the collection. So there's STL files, which are the geometry files for the 3D prints. I can put those into WebGL, like using 3GS library or something, and pop that right in the wiki so the curators can look at them. Compare them to the prints we have today, and then we can sort of figure out, are the measurements right, you know, and we're trying to figure out how to reproduce 3D prints. So it's really useful for doing that. The version control aspect is great, you know, we can track all the changes. Customizable, it's really great. I think the last presenter said rapid prototyping. A lot of the systems in the museum are some Win32 compiled thing that you can't really shift or try new things out. So this really let us go beyond that with the easy customizableness. People are familiar with it, MediaWiki, so we can even try and get a curator to enter information once in a while. Which is a challenge because we want everyone to enter stuff. Community, we deployed one at MoMA, and I think Tate's trying it out. So we're interested in the GLAM community and what the efforts are there to really get some traction with our peers and the museum community as a whole. RESTful API, that's great. No user limit. We don't have to pay licenses, and no file size limit based on our storage array. Cons is open source and free. You know the whole free as in puppy thing. The museum is great. IT's great. It's a very Microsoft specific type of infrastructure. So when we say open source, I got it. Oh yeah, I'll support it. Don't worry. But I have a good relationship. I actually work in the IT department now. But their argument is no tech support. It hasn't been an issue. The visual editor's great. It was hard getting some of the non-technical people up on the wiki markup, but the visual editor's great. Granular access control. Museums do have rights around things, which I know conflicts with share all knowledge. So it's not a huge blocker, it's just something we have to talk about. I think there's some plugins, so it's not really an issue. Not fully integrated, that's not MediaWiki's fault. It's that we have a bunch of legacy systems. So I have to do stuff like the collections management's in this 4D database. I never even remembers that. And we have to like write all this middleware to move it to Microsoft SQL Server because it's required by IT. Then we have to write a Node.js server to make it a RESTful JSON API. But they're migrating to a new modern collection database that speaks REST and is web-based. So we're getting there. I guess that's my slide. So do I?
thought that was...
Okay, the ecosystem. So yeah, we have the collections API, which we're migrating to, that holds kind of, I guess archivists joke, the tombstone information about the art, but when we have complex qualities about artwork, we expand on that, like the Sonic Shadows example. The collection API kind of holds this core information, and then we expand on it with technical documentation, versions, iterations, and things, and we want to link that into the MediaWiki. Let's see, Embark Shadows, our collection management. NetX is our digital asset management system. And there's they just moved to WordPress, so we want to make RESTful API linkages to pull the right data, the publicly accessible data about the collection into the website. And yes, and oh yeah, there's a rights database, things like that. So this is kind of our ecosystem, and we're making connections now. They're not the most optimal, well, it's not the most optimal ecosystem now, but our goal is to make it that, and we're getting there. And is that?
So if we circle back to these objectives that we, in that research that happened a few years ago, if we circle back to them and look at them, the MediaWiki is checking off a lot of these boxes. That being said, we started it as an experiment at the museum just to see if it was even a platform that that we would like and that would serve our needs. And I think it is. It's also it was also cool to use it just as sort of a prototype to show to vendors, if anything, to see this is what we like, and we wish that sort of we hope that this is what databases will go to, museum databases. So, but we're also aware, or that if it's not integrated, and Mark was talking to that, you create yet another silo as part of your ecosystem. So we do want to make it connect. We're not sure yet what the glue is, if the glue is an API, if the glue is Wikibase, what we heard this morning. But I'm very excited for linked data to create museum databases that are not static, but that actually bring in information from the outside world to like make them alive in a way, plus contributing to this big cloud of knowledge that's currently being generated, and where I feel the museum's voice is maybe missing a little bit because of certain technological barriers. So anyways, this is I think what we'll leave you with, and we'll thank you for your attention.
The artist in me has a question, and that is, do you have sound capturing from the original sound
We do.
of the original boiler rooms to now?
We do.
And do you play the old sound back currently, or did he find a new spot in the new boiler room and it's just different now and you have documentation of both?
No, that's, so we have both. We do have a recording. We have several recordings from that first instantiation. So we have the recordings of the raw signal coming from the boiler room, and then we have the recording of what was then being broadcast on the speakers. But working with living artists, he came in and he found new sources, and we had him on site, and he worked with an audio engineer from Arab, and both of them were redesigning the max patch and that, and so the cool thing, and that's where, so when Mark was saying to have access to the MediaWiki, because currently we have it behind a firewall because there's a lot of information like this is not written as a publication for the public, but we whitelisted the audio engineer's IP, so he was able to access it and directly enter all the information of his experience. So we have the primary source of that information entering that into the record, which was great. But yeah, to answer your question, no, it was redesigned and there's a whole new backend to that work now.
I'm wondering, in that list of goals that you had you moved to MediaWiki, what was MediaWiki's biggest failure?
You mean those objectives here?
Yeah.
What is its biggest failure? I don't know I think failure is like kind of a loaded word. I think there's room for improvement, definitely. I think it was designed for this like worldwide information sharing, which for us as a museum makes it a little complicated. For example, if we could just send one, if an artwork goes on loan, I am tasked with compiling installation instructions. So we sent the work and then we sent them instructions that say, do this and this and this to install it in space. If I could just send them a link with a login and say, go to that page, you'll find all the information you need, that would make my life easier. But I know that's not what the platform was designed for originally, but that's something. I do think that there is some, the visual editor is great. I prefer the other one because there's a few things you cannot do with the visual editor, but I think that was our biggest issue in the beginning, was that people were really put off by this editing backend, like where I would just lose people, even if I said, hey, it's not that hard, but people saw that and it just, you know, I think everything just dissolved in front of them. The other big argument that our IT department brings up is that they wish that there was corporate tech support. So currently Mark is the one who's fixing everything if it breaks, and it is a little buggy, but if it breaks, Mark is the one, and that is, I think, for maybe many corporations, that would be sort of a peace of mind if there's a number you could call to help that. Those are the things I'm thinking of.
Well, I was going to say for, like, I think larger adoption in the GLAM, what is that? What does GLAM say? Libraries, archives, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. They have limited resources. They have like a lot of Linux administrators on staff. So the moment in New York, they're like, you know, we like what you're doing with MediaWiki. We want to use it. And I didn't investigate if there's a cloud solution. I imagine there is, but I was just like, all right, I'll prep a VM and I'll move it over and I'll launch it on your network with your IT department. But, you know, they don't really have the facility to patch it, install new plugins and things like that. So I think like the Internet Archive has this archive it system, which, you know, museums can just plug in and archive their stuff. I think MediaWiki, if there's like a cloud solution, because I know that other museums, they want to implement this, but I don't know if they have the technical resources in-house to do so. And so like a cloud-based solution tailored to that. And then museums are really visual, so we had to really sort of write our own skin and things like that. But
we didn't write our own skin.
Well, we had a person like do a lot of CSS on the front end. So. But, oh, and if anyone knows of the IIIF image format and any clues on integrating that in MediaWiki, that would be fabulous. So anyways. That's my 2 cents. I hope that was good.
I think there are a lot of people in this room who would love to help you with your wiki.
Oh, yeah.
I was just going to mention, I've heard people on and off talk about IIF support in MediaWiki. Like occasionally people poke at it. I don't think anything in particular has really come out of that, but occasionally there are people working on that, if that makes you feel better.
I've seen some repos, you know.
Yeah, like, you know, some like half-hearted tries.
Yeah, like good efforts.
Sorry, that was fine. So I had a hard time figuring out how secretive this information has to be, like how, I'm guessing you don't have the installation instructions for each piece of art out in the public, but rather than trying to send information from your wiki to another museum, could you have a federated wiki that all the museums agree to use and make it as open as possible? Would that help you?
I think we were at the Museum and Computer Network conference in Denver earlier year, and there's efforts towards that using Wikibase for this, this centralized repository of museum information. And I think a lot of museums want to do that. We've been talking about it for years. The problem is they might have different cultures, different information management models, but I think we were talking about looking at Wikibase, and then maybe, it's all like grant funded and things like that, but there is a desire to do this, not have the source code of an artwork or something, but the kind of the publicly accessible information. And so yes, there's interest. Will we get there soon? If anyone's interested in helping us think through that, we'd love to hang out with you.
But I think that the closest you may get to this sort of common knowledge base is maybe Wikidata or some form of that. There's some first baby steps, but I think we're the first one in the US to and even go that far. And again, the MoMA, I think they're looking into that, but a lot of museums are publishing Wikidata and contributing that. So there may be more in that direction.
You said earlier that it would make your life a whole lot easier if you could just email someone a link with the instructions for the installation. There's actually an extension called Email Page. And if you check that out, Email Page will do exactly what you want.
Perfect, yeah. Oh, thank you. And it does not just send them a folder with the HTML. Render page, great.
Sorry if you already covered this and I missed it, but where did you get the idea to use MediaWiki? Did you see other museums using it, or was there some specific inspiration?
I don't know, and then I thought, I think we need that, or we should do that. And then I said, Mark, can we build a wiki? And then we kind of flew under the radar of our IT department and said, hey, can we have a little service space to and then we just took it from there.
That flying under the radar thing is a really common pattern. Okay, thank you.